would you walk under the gatehouse? Is that where there'll be, you'll pay, or not, I know you're not paying, but that where you'll take tickets, or is that where the operation is, or is it up at the?
It might be easier to show the other, there's another board.
I want to kind of understand how it's going to work. That's all.
Of course it is.
You see this thing?
This is what we need.
Just from a distance.
Do I need, okay. I know the audience can't see this. It's a little bit of a challenge. So here's Canton Avenue, and here is the gatehouse, which is offices. So that doesn't have a public purpose. So here's the new curb cut. So you would come up, here's the new curb cut, and this is the existing drive. So it would hook right into the existing drive. You'd come up the existing drive to, here's the mansion. This is a brand-new driveway that we will construct that goes into this parking area. The block that you see here is we call it the modern garage because it was built in the 1970s. It's a garage. And that will be turned into the visitor center. So that's where people would get tickets. There will also be restrooms in there. So the parking will be here. You will have come up. The parking will be here. You'll get your ticket, and your tour experience will start at the main door of the mansion. As I mentioned, our properties are open during daylight hours for walkers, for joggers. The other day we saw someone cross-country skiing across the back when the snow was still with us. So they will be able to access the property.
Could you tell me where the Vappy Myers house is?
The Vappy Myers house is right here.
And you own that as well?
We
No,
do not. We do not own that. We purchased that at the time that we were negotiating the purchase of the Eustis estate. The house, actually, the property on both sides of the estate became available for sale, and we were very, very concerned about the development potential for both of those. So we raised additional funds to buy both Vappy Myers and the Quinn House, which is on the other side. Since that time, we have sold Vappy Myers back into private ownership, but it's in our easement program, so there are preservation restrictions.
And do you own the house at the bottom of the photograph there?
This house?
No, in the
The white?
southern.
Oh,
the
yes,
south-
I'm sorry.
Southeast
Yes,
corner.
yes, that's the Quinn House.
That's the Quinn House.
We do own that, yes.
Okay. Because we're dealing with special permit here, would you say that the two-page handout that you gave us and to which you referred is an accurate representation of the programs that you intend to conduct there for as long as you own the property within reason?
Yes, I would say that's true.
Yeah, okay. And would you be okay with us referencing this if we were to decide on this matter as a representation of what's going to happen up there from a programmatic
Yes.
standpoint?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we should realize that over 20 years, certain trends in museums may change or something. So I think this should be illustrative, but I wouldn't want to have it restricted to that, Jeff.
No, I know, Bob, but we don't have any land use control over the property as the Board of Appeals, and we're being asked to give special permit consideration. So I think that's a fair point, but I just wanted to be able to have the record reflect that in considering these special permits, it is really for the purposes of carrying out historic New England's mission.
Correct.
And consistent with this program. Maybe that's the best way to say it.
That's fine.
You know,
No,
okay.
that would be fine.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Mr. Sheffield, have you finished?
I have no further questions at this time.
Mr. Sheffield, could I ask you this question? What, if any, approvals are required of the planning board?
There's a number of approvals altogether. One is the tree warden because we're cutting down three trees. The planning board, because it's a scenic road, and we'll be knocking down part of the wall, and hopefully it will look far better after we finish than before. We've already gone before those bodies, and we have not only a vote, but a written decision approving what our application called for.
And that's including the planning board?
Yes,
At some point in time, are you going to favor us with a copy of that written decision?
I would be happy to favor it, leave it with you tonight.
Thank you.
Secondly, we have to go to the Concom because there are wetlands near the driveway. We've had a preliminary meeting with the Concom. They're going to do a site tour shortly and then consider it. That's primarily the approvals that will be required.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Lundberg, please.
I think you mentioned that public safety, they've weighed in. Did they weigh in front of
Yes,
planning
we
board?
spoke- we s-
With regard
well-
to access and so forth?
No, we had a meeting with all the department heads, including the police chief, et cetera, on our proposal. And we note that, for example, the new driveway entrance as proposed has improved safety sight lines than either Chestnut Run or the gatehouse entrance. The police chief has seen the overall plans, and from a public safety point of view, and he's the chairman of the Traffic Commission, he did not seem to raise any concern or problems.
We have also met with the fire chief, and actually, Mr. Havoc can speak to this better than I because you handled the meeting, but we've met with the fire chief, who has also been to the property. Ben and I did a walkthrough with him, and we are adding actually a hydrant. I can show you where. In this, I know I don't have a mic, in this area, we're adding a hydrant because there's some concern about access to water as well.
With regard to the request in number 4 as to the fill, the 100 yards crushed stone, 1,000 cubic yards crushed stone, do you have an idea in terms of how many deliveries, what is the delivery load per truckload, things of that nature?
I don't know, it'd be enough to do the parking lot, and that's what we're using the crushed stone for, the 2 different parking lots. We'd like to avoid asphalt wherever possible. And we plan to have the crushed stone for the 2 parking lots.
I'm just
1,000 yards, your truck's probably 60 yards in it. Right, so, I mean, just round numbers, that's, I don't know, with 3 lawyers up here, it's probably not a good idea. doing that. You get an idea, it's not a lot of trips.
I object, Mr.
Yeah.
Mullen.
Give or take 30 truckloads.
30. Mr. Sheffield, I've got a very technical question to ask you.
By all means.
The application has been brought in the name of Historic New England.
Yes.
Now, I understand that that's, I don't mean it in this sense, but that's a DBA name, doing business as, it's a trade name. I think from looking at the assessors records, which I did this afternoon, the property is technically owned by the Society for the Preservation of New England Antiquities, DBA Historic New England. And so, do I assume correctly that if the board saw fit to grant the special permits, that you'd want the special permits to run in favor of the named owner and not a DBA name or not a trade name?
That would be fine.
I think
That
I'm-
would be fine. In fact, on the deed itself, it had DBA Historic New England.
It did, and I just thought that you want to be sure to have the record landowner
Okay.
to be party to any approvals by the board. So if that's all right with you.
That would be fine.
Okay, that's great.
That would be fine.
Why don't you proceed with any other further presentation you want to make, Mr. Sheffield?
Okay, I think that takes care. You have to make a determination of whether we are a philanthropy. And I think that you've received enough information to be able to pass that hurdle and issue a special permit for that. Number two is the parking, and I will say that parking was a significant point of interest to our neighbors. When we first went to them and showed them what our plans were, we were providing 80 parking spaces beside the museum, and we were providing 14 parking spaces behind the gatehouse. After we spoke to them, they were concerned about the size of the parking, and they were concerned with its proximity to Chestnut Run, which is the private way that some of the people that own property in the rear of the Eustace estate travel. What we did was, number one, we reduced the parking from 80 down to 48, and we believe that we can survive with 48 parking spaces. We also have a grass area that could be used for overflow parking for up to 56 additional vehicles if that became necessary.
And where is that located on the plan, Mr. Sheffield?
Yeah. This is the parking area here, and then this behind it is a grass area that is suitable for overflow parking. The original plan was to have the parking go here, and
Bob, they want you to use the mic.
Thank you.
the original plan was to have the parking up to Chestnut Run. And the access way would be to come in through the driveway, go up here, go down Chestnut Run and into the parking lot. And the neighbors were concerned that somebody coming out here might go in the wrong direction. They might not take this left turn and go down Chestnut Run in front of their homes. And so what we did was we, number one, made smaller the parking lot. Number two, we pulled it well back of Chestnut Run. Number three, we will carve through a number of trees in order to create a roadway here for access to the parking lot. And number four, we put in significant vegetation that will serve as a buffer so that the people living there should be blocked from headlights or seeing the cars themselves. This is what we propose now, and we think that it will meet our need, and it will also minimize the alteration of the terrain at that point.
And you leave that terrain in its natural state, Mr. Sheffield?
Right now, we have trees. This is our,
The apple orchard?
Yeah.
Yes, that will remain.
it's an apple orchard, and it will stay as an apple orchard.
And likewise, the portion of the parking lot that's, I'll say, to the south of the garage area, the field area, which is capable of holding 56 vehicles, will maintain in its grass state.
As grassed area, yes.
Thank you.
And we feel that that will, number one, meet the needs of the historic New England, and also will meet the needs of the neighbors. And we were very sensitive to the neighbors, you know, in that area.
You told us about the philanthropic finding we're required to make, Mr. Sheffield. You just discussed parking. Is there another item or two that you want to discuss as part of this
Yeah,
special
as
permit
part
application?
of the parking, we have a parking bylaw, which is section 7 of our zoning regulations, and there is no specific ratio or number of parking spaces that would be indicated or required. And I think that the board needs to make a finding that the minimum number of parking spaces that we must provide would be 48 for the museum and 13 for the gatehouse.
And what about the grass overflow area for 56? Should we?
That could be mentioned, and that could be, but they don't conform to the design standards of a parking lot. So I would suggest that the board conclude that having an overflow parking area, the 48 would be adequate as a minimum standard.
Okay. And let's just presume, for the sake of argument, and it may be true, that the project here is just extraordinarily successful, and there becomes a need for even additional parking. Do you understand that you'd be coming back to the Board of Appeals if you were using more parking than you've indicated you're providing for?
No, I don't believe it would be necessary, because I think, according to the building commissioner in his letter, you are approving a minimum number. So therefore, if we needed
Unless
five
we're not.
additional, pardon me?
Unless we're not.
What?
Unless the minimum is the maximum. It seems to me the testimony is that people are concerned about the amount of parking, and I think that's John's point.
Okay,
You know, so if the minimum is the maximum, then you will have to come back.
okay,
Yeah.
that could,
So,
okay.
Just-
That's,
Just as an assurance to the neighbors, because
that
if
would
you,
be fine.
if you find out you've got
Need
300
six more,
vehicles
yeah.
there and they're parking all over the place, there's, the bylaw contemplates some type of reasonable control by the Board of Appeals. It's consistent with the historic nature of the dwelling and the use and all of that. And since I see a lot of vacant land there, as gorgeous as it is, I think there's room to accommodate that type of need. Did you want to say something? Let me say this, Ms. Very. If you want to say something, you're delighted to hear from you. But you may want to talk with Mr. Sheffield first. That's up to you.
oh, you can say something. You're my boss.
I'm all set, thank
Okay,
you.
that's fine. Mr. Sheffield, we've covered 3 items, the philanthropic, the parking. Is there anything else you want to?
Yes, I would like
Thank
to cover the non-conforming. You have a plan that shows the height of the museum building at 50 feet. We know that the current zoning is 35 foot. In 1878, when this was constructed, we didn't have the zoning bylaw, so they built it a little oversized. Also, the gatehouse, which was constructed in
1892?
1892, predates the current building zoning regulations, and that is closer to Canton Avenue than would be normally allowed. 40 feet from the street, a 40-foot setback would be required today.
And what is the setback as it exists in the field?
It's about 20 feet.
Yep.
So I think that takes care of the non-conforming. We took care of the section 4A, which is the fill and earth removal section of the application. And I would also like to say that I went to a number of other nonprofits and looked at the record. And I find that typically Milton has a large number of nonprofits. It has not had prohibitive regulations limiting its activities in any of its nonprofits. And this would include the American Legion Hall, the Captain Forbes Museum, the Milton Women's Club, the Wakefield Estate, and in each of those, if they had a wedding every week, it would not be, prohibited by the town or its special permits or something like that. When you come to the American Legion Hall, there's a restriction that you can't park on Granite Avenue. You have to park in the parking lot. But, I mean, there's no programmatic restrictions, and I would hope that we would have the same thing here. We have the Camp Sayre, the Boy Scout camp in Milton. We have Cunningham Foundation. We have the Milton Garden Club. We have the Milton Historical Society and its buildings. We have the Milton Yacht Club. We have the Seasons Hospice.
Under construction.
Under construction, yes. But there's no programmatic restrictions in the Board of Appeals decision on that.
I don't want to be cute or argue with you, Mr. Sheffield, but if you have a hospice facility, I don't know whether you'd be conducting weddings and
no.
How else do you regulate a hospice site?
What I'm saying is these are all nonprofits that are operating in their own direction, in their own fashion, and in just about every one of those cases where there is a special permit, there is something in the special permit that says the Board of Appeals retains the right to amend or change any conditions or insert other conditions.
From time to time after hearing by the board.
Pardon me? Yes.
From time to time after hearing by the board, and I've been sitting on the board for too long now, probably 18 years, and I think every special permit we've ever granted
has that provided
for a dog farm to anything has that provision in it.
Exactly. Yes.
But I don't quite understand what you're saying. For example, here, Ms. Vieira told us that as an accommodation, and it may be more than an accommodation to neighbors, the applicant has agreed not to have more than 12 weddings there.
Right. Rental functions.
Okay, so rental functions is a better, outdoor rental functions. Well, is that now what's going to open too many questions in my mind? Are you suggesting that you could have a wedding as an indoor rental function that's not, as long as it's not outdoors?
Yes, because the capacity inside, it would be small. The capacity inside is 99.
When I heard you originally, I had the impression that because of the number of guests at weddings and because of the significance of the estate and the vastness of the estate, that you were going to restrict it to 12. Let's use your expression, 12 outdoor events, which is understandable, and it's something that could be easily determined. But does that mean you could have 50 wedding functions out there as long as you did not use the exterior of the premises for the purposes of a wedding? In other words, you could park 300 cars out there as long as you keep the wedding inside the premises?
Well, the capacity for inside would only be 99 people, so you wouldn't have 300,
Okay, so you could have a
You
small
could-
wedding,
it-
100.
anniversary party.
No, why I'm confused here is that I thought I understood you to be saying that you were going to limit the rental and social activities, more rental activities at the premises,
No, I apologize if
out
I
of respect
wasn't.
to the neighbors. Yeah, okay, right. Yeah, Mr. Mullen points out incorrectly, your handout specifically says that the applicant will allow no more than 12 outdoor function rentals per year. And I suppose they could be of any different variety, as long as outdoors, that you could have a fundraiser, you could have I don't know, you could have anything.
Right, it's-
So my question is, when Mr. Sheffield has just brought up this business about not unduly restricting nonprofits like the American Legion post on Granite Avenue, which I respectfully suggest is a stretch in my view, in trying to compare this, and the use of the American Legion House. Does that mean that, and maybe I should address this to Mr. Sheffield so we have a legal answer. Does that mean you're suggesting that we should not include in the special permit the agreement by the applicant here that they will allow no more than 12 outdoor function rentals per year? In other
No,
words,
I think it should be included. That is something that was
but nothing,
specifically.
but nothing else should be included in the.
I hope we go on the side of erring, on the downside of regulation rather than the harder standard.
Okay, is it your position, Mr. Sheffield, and the applicant's position, that if we take your approach, and that's the only specific condition on use that we get involved with here, if we find out that after this project is underway and it's fabulously successful, as I really think it's going to be, I think this is a spectacular house, and the historic New England is just a fabulous preservationist for the reasons that you've described, Ms. Vera. But if for some reason that the neighbors find that the use of the premises is intruding on the peaceful enjoyment of their properties, for whatever reason, we don't have to get overly specific. It's not your position that the Board of Appeals says, because it didn't include specific restrictions in its special permits, isn't free in the future on a complaint by neighbors or neighbor associations to review the special permit and amend it if we think
By all means. I mean,
it's in the best interest of the neighborhood.
That should be a power incorporated, and it should be a power that's used when appropriate.
Right. I just wanted to make that perfectly clear, and I think we have.
Talk about it some more.
Do you have any questions about this, Mr. Mullen? Now is the time
Talk
to...
about that later.
You'll talk about it later, okay. Mr. Mullen is going to hold his peace.
That's fine.
For the present time. Mr.
No, that was, I had my own issues on that.
Okay. So, Mr. Sheffield, do you have anything else you'd like to add in support of this application?
I think we can wrap it up and ask for the board to consider the application.
Okay, great. I think what we'll do before we do that, I think we'll see if there's anybody who wishes to be heard on this application. So the applicant has presented its position, and let me see if there are any citizens out there who have questions of Mr. Sheffield or Ms. Vieira or any of the applicant's consultants. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. What? Okay, let me just tell you in terms of procedure here, because this is being televised, you're either going to, no, Mr. Sheffield, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're going to have to come up to the table, ma'am, because otherwise you won't be on the screen and nobody will know who you are. And
Do I stay?
you can, no, you can come right over, that's fine.
Hi, how are you?
That's great. Why don't you identify yourself, please?
My name is Christine Seidman. I live in 1350 Canton Ave. And my question relates to the, what I would more globally call events to be held? Because we have heard that there would be 12 rental events, weddings, I think they've been glibly labeled as, and also potential fundraising events. And so I'm curious, what's the total number of outdoor events, regardless of whether they are a rental from which you will gain revenue, or regardless of whether they are an outdoor event hosted by New England, and what is the total number of those that you expect to have per year? And how would you break that out in terms of what we all recognize are 6 months of years, 6 months in the year when you can do an outdoor event?
That's a complicated question. Do you understand the question?
I think I understand the question.
Okay, why don't you
I'm not-
answer it the best you
I was
can,
saying, I'm not
and
sure
we'll
who's
follow up.
answered. Am I
Mr.
answering?
Sheffield can answer it. We don't really care.
Just as an order of, am I supposed to remain sitting here? Is that acceptable?
Sure you can.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
we
wasn't
welcome
sure.
you here.
Okay. So what we have voluntarily agreed to with the neighbors is 12 outdoor function rentals per year. So that covers the function rentals. When we talk about the family programs that I mentioned, such as history hikes, Easter egg hunts, kite flying fairs, we estimate, and we did some work on this, we estimate probably 3 of those types of programs per year. You know, they're relatively good size, so we don't do them all that frequently. Other than that, I mean, I would say to you that when people take guided tours, there will be sometimes guided tours of the landscape, but that's not a large function. That's a guided tour of the landscape. And when a school group comes, they might be inside the property, and they also might be outside the property. From a fundraiser perspective, you know, we have 36 sites. So I know that some of you know that in 2013, we did our gala at the Eustis Estate. Not that the Eustis Estate isn't a fabulously brilliant location, but you don't consistently do your gala at the same place all the time. So it would probably, you know, be a number of years before a big event like that happened again at the property. There may be smaller fundraisers. Those aren't as, it's not as easy for me to give a number on that because it just depends on the fundraising priorities of that particular year. I don't feel like I'm being clear, but that one's a little bit tougher to put a number on.
Could I ask you a follow-up question? If the Eustis Estate, I think you've told us, accommodates, is it 99 people?
Inside.
Inside? Okay. How does that compare to some of your other larger historic properties? Do you have other properties that would hold 200 people or 300 people, or are your facilities mostly about this size?
This is on the larger side for a property for us. I'm sorry.
The event number to me is something that has been of concern to the neighbors. Whether it is a gala for fundraising by the organization or a rental wedding situation, it still is an event. And so the number that I heard you quote a number of times was 12
Outdoor
events.
functions.
Right, outdoor
That's
functions.
exactly.
But I think that's a bit misleading because that's 12 rental outdoor functions onto which will be superimposed fundraising events and galas by the Historical Society.
That are exclusively indoor functions?
No, not at all.
Our gala was tented outside.
Right.
Okay.
I just wanted that to be very clear.
But I would add,
like to add 2 other things, if I might. And that is, when we say...
Well, that's right, but that's not the question. Well, I understand that, but I don't think... Ms. Sidman, is it Seidman? Seidman. Yeah, why don't you come up here, come back here. I just want to make this perfectly clear, because I'm missing something here. As I heard the applicant, and Bob Sheffield can correct me if I'm wrong, that the applicant is basically stipulating that it will not have more than 12 outdoor functions per year.
That's not correct, sir.
That's not correct.
That's not what I understood.
Well, that's what, where is
Outdoor
the...
rental functions.
Rental,
Okay.
rental.
Yeah, well, what does rental mean?
A wedding, if you personally wanted to rent the property to host your daughter's
I
wedding.
understand, yeah.
But if they want to host their own events, that is, they're not renting it themselves, they own it.
Oh, you mean events for the historic New England?
Correct.
Okay, but I don't think that's really, should be a real concern for yours, because you should be more concerned with their having 12 outdoor rental functions per year, where there may be tents or soirees going on.
Certainly.
But what if they have 55 indoor functions that are cocktail parties, fundraisers, and all of that?
Right.
Is that of concern? That's not of concern to
Those are all
you?
of concerns. I was simply trying to clarify the number 12 is a bit ambiguous because it is 12 rental, on top of which will be other external events
Yes.
as well as additional internal events.
But do you see a difference between the historic preservation group having some outdoor functions for its own charitable purposes vis-à-vis using the property basically as a rental hall? As Mr. Sheffield quoted the American Legion post down on Granite Avenue, there's so are you saying you object to the applicant?
I was simply trying to clarify the number of external noise-related events that will be hosted
For any person,
by
whether it's the
any-
applicant?
And in not over a 12-month period of time, given our weather, but over a 6-month period of time, which is when the weather is basically good in New England, as we all recognize. And so we will be with 12 events a year
Yes.
into 2 a month. And then if we add on to that a gala or 2 for historic New England fundraising events, we will have an event outside every 3 out of 4 weekends. That is my concern, but I.
Okay, we appreciate your concern.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, Mr. Mullen has a
No,
question.
just, this is what I'm hearing, it really goes to intensity of use. And there's maybe 3 types of uses. There's regular programmatic uses, the day-to-day flow of all of the things about which we talked about. Then there's the rentals, inside and outside. And then there's the non-rentals. And I think the question from the neighbors is, if you were to describe what was going to be happening at this property under your stewardship, how would you describe it? We intend to hold, we intend to have day-to-day programmatic activities as described in this 2-pager. We've committed to limiting our outdoor functions, rental functions, to 12 per year. And we think there'll be approximately X number of additional functions that will be held in and out, or inside the home and outside the home. I think that's what Mrs. Seidman's question was. And I don't think I heard this, but I have another question, and that is, you own Chestnut Run in fee, right?
We own Chestnut Run.
You own the fee in it.
Yes.
But subject to easements.
Well, yeah, subject to the benefit, everyone who owns property along it has the benefit of,
Well, they own half the road.
I think you own the full road, don't you?
Full road.
Yeah.
Full road.
You do.
Yeah.
In fact, in some cases, we own hundreds of feet past
Yeah.
Chestnut Run.
Yeah.
That's how it's beyond its layout.
That's
But are can you clarify as to whether or not any of these functions will use Chestnut's Run to get to the site?
They will not.
Okay, see, I think that helps. I think it helps the neighbors to understand a little bit about what's going on. So let me ask you, would that be something that you would be willing to have the board considering as it deliberates this matter? That
Yes,
Chestnut's
yes,
Run will
yes.
not be used?
Yes, as I pointed out in the parking, I mentioned that the original
Yeah,
idea
yeah.
was to
Yeah,
run out
that was
here
helpful.
on Chestnut Run and
Yeah.
into the parking lot. Now we are building a road. This will be available for fire engines,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
whatnot.
And for people who use it now, of course.
And
yeah.
for the residents, we plan to make the entranceway here, and we'll have no sign or anything that indicates you could even get there from here, on the corner of Chestnut Run and Kent Avenue.
So along this line of questioning, Chairman will acknowledge, I just finished the thought, just while we have it, thank you, Bob, is it's clear that the access is through the current drive as modified with the new curb cut off of Canton. And Chestnut's Run won't be used, but what's not clear is the volume, the intensity on the function portion of the program. So I think it would be helpful to have a discussion about that, perhaps not now.
No, I think you should have it now.
Okay.
This is the appropriate time to have it.
I think what we're saying is we can write in the decision that there will not be more than 12 outdoor rental functions. There may only be 6. It doesn't mean that there's going to be 12 every year. The other
All
thing.
right, but Mr. Mullen, what Mr. Mullen is concerned about, I guess I am too, is whether you can estimate the reasonable extent to which this facility, which is one of I'll call it the society's larger facilities, is expected to be used for
functions.
functions for the applicant's purposes, whether it's fundraising or whatever. Are you able to give us some assurance that that would be 3 times a year, or 4 times a year, or twice a year, or?
Just for clarification, if I may, for applicants' purpose, are we talking about fundraisers, or are we talking about lectures and symposia?
No, we're not talking about educationally.
Okay.
See, I wouldn't limit it that way. You've got functions and you've got programs. The programs, I think, are pretty straightforward. That's the casual, occasional people going up there for the. I think it's the functions that people are concerned about, because that's what's going to drive people and traffic. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I got you.
And
Okay.
after hours, after
after hours.
during the cover of night.
Yeah, okay.
And weekends.
So it's really that. It's not applicants or, and I think rental was a little bit of a concern. So we dispose with rentals, or just think about it as intensity of use, and just to give us a sense of what to expect. That's my question.
Would you agree to not to more than 15 combined?
I'm not sure I still understand if we're talking about a total, what types we're talking about. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to
all right.
understand for example, if we have a lecture usually we get 40 to 50 people at a lecture, it's probably going to happen on an evening. It's not going to be a Tuesday afternoon at 2. It's going to be on an evening or on a weekend day.
Maybe you'd say outside of normal business hours, something like that. Does that help?
So the normal business hours for a museum, just to clarify what our operating hours would be to be an open museum, we would look at from June to October, it would be Wednesday through Sunday from 10 to 5. And then from November through May, it would be Friday through Sunday from 10 to 5. So that would be open hours for the museum, which would mean come, take a guided tour,
Yeah.
that type of thing. When we hold a lecture or a workshop or a symposia, that would usually be in an evening. Sometimes they're on a weekend. That would be, inside in the main hall. We usually get about 40 to 50 people at those. I would be very surprised if you saw more than one of those per month, frankly. You won't get a lot of people if you try to do more than one of those per month.
Are those exclusively educational activities, as opposed to having everyone come for a cocktail party from 6 to 7 and then have your symposium from 7 to 8 o'clock?
Sometimes if we have a lecture, we have wine and cheese.
After all.
Okay.
So the family programs, which would be outdoor programs, I think I mentioned like history hikes and other things like that, probably 3 of those per year. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm just continuing on the.
Well, it's hard to answer the question
I'm
because
sorry.
you're not in operation at the present time, and you haven't set up your program, and I think that's one of the difficulties we're going to have here.
In terms of our own fundraisers, outdoor fundraiser like a gala, which I think is what people are referencing when they're thinking of an outdoor function that someone didn't pay for. That isn't even once a year. We are not going to have a gala every year at the Eustis Estate. We don't have a gala every year at any one of our 36 properties. We aren't having a gala this year at any property. So, you know, you're not going to see 2 galas a year. In fact, heaven help us if we have to do 2 galas a year.
And presumably your galas are outside, are they not? Or sometimes are they exclusively inside?
No, it would be outside. For a group of the size you would have a gala for, it would be an outside tented event.
Okay. Does it make any sense to indicate in our decision that in terms of non-educational symposia or meetings or whatever, galas, I guess being the perfect example, that you wouldn't have more than 2 or 3 of those in a year? Does that make any sense, or is that?
Galas, yes, I would consider a symposium educational, but
Yeah, that it is. I would too, and that's where you get into the difficulty, because part of your function, you're a museum and a study center. So if you're having a guest lecturer in a symposium, and presumably they would be at night, and that's more difficult to control, isn't it? Because it depends how active the organization is, how popular this particular facility is, and it's a lot of different factors go into how often you'd be using it for those purposes. And I don't, maybe Mr. Mullen can help us here, but I don't know how you get involved saying, well, you can do up to 10 symposia. But on the other hand, you know, the difficulty is, and we don't have to deal with it now, but if you assume that you have 15 symposia or 20 symposia or even 10, and that they become offensive to the neighbors, they're going to come back in here again, and we're going to have to revisit that use. So that's why we're kind of looking for some, without being unduly restrictive.
I don't think the neighbors care if it's a fundraiser, if it's an educational, if it's a you know, an evaluation of something that's mission critical or not. I think they're really, what I'm hearing is it's about use. And what I think I heard you say, let me just run this back to you. You've got your 12 outdoor functions per year, and you expect functions outside of regular hours at approximately 1 per month, but nearly exclusively those will all be indoors. Is that true? Or is that too limiting?
well, it's so difficult because I think we're getting into semantics. You know, functions to me is a function rental, but like a lecture or a mission, 1 per month, yes. An indoor lecture
Outside of the regular hours?
outside of the regular hours, I would say 1 per month is our average at a property like this.
Average 1 per month.
And they're usually 40 to 50 people, and they're not loud. It's a lecture.
Yeah.
Do you have?
yeah. Okay.
Or do you expect to have a certain number of indoor rental events? You talked about the capacity being 99, but I'm not sure if we're clear as to whether that's a direction that you're going to be looking to function in, and I think it's something that perhaps the neighbors would be interested in hearing.
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. We would hope that we could make the interior, there's only, we wouldn't make the entire house available for function rentals for an outside person to come in and rent it. There are really 3 rooms on the first floor. It would be the 2 parlors and the main hall that would be available. The capacity is 99. We would hope that we can make that available. I would suggest to you, our experience at our other properties is, you know, there is call for space to do a 99 or smaller function, but it's not a huge call for that. Usually if someone's renting a place for functions, it's for a larger number than 99 or fewer. But there are some, you know, you could have an anniversary party or a retirement party, I suppose.
If you did have an anniversary party, is it fair, and it was going to be after hours, but it was going to be inside, would that be catered by the applicant or the applicant's catering organization, or would the sponsors of the party hire a caterer and do a bar service for that? Or did you handle that part of it?
What we do at our other properties is we have a list of approved caterers that the individual who's renting the facility would select from.
And do you somehow regulate the use of the rental facility you're building here for that preferred caterer, indicating that they're supposed to park their trucks in a certain area and
Oh,
they're
yes.
supposed to maintain the dignity of the building and
That's why we have a short list. We
Okay.
don't, yeah.
and does that also, and that caterer, does that also include alcoholic service, or is, how is that generally handled?
I wish I had our functions manager here. I don't want to misspeak on that. I'm not exactly sure, to be honest.
Okay.
I can find that out for you.
Okay, I mean, wouldn't you think that you wouldn't allow somebody who's having an anniversary party to bring in their own bar
Oh, no.
service, or they wouldn't be able to go to Doyle's Pub and
No, no.
rent the
no.
bar and bring it into this historic
No,
building?
of course not.
So it has to be regulated in some way.
Hillside, probably.
Maybe mentioning Doyle's is going out of line. Sorry. Excuse me, I may have touched a chord with Mr. Mullen.
There may also be a requirement for a one-day liquor license, of course, which would have to be going to the selectmen, and the selectmen can impose such conditions as it will be over by 10 o'clock, or, whatever they feel is necessary, and that is, a control.
Well, it's interesting, Mr. Sheffield, because I was a little bit critical of you earlier when you were talking about regulating the use of the facility in nonprofits, and yet we've been talking for a half an hour here. We're coming back to that very issue of how many functions can be had under certain circumstances, and whether they're inside and outside, and who's the caterer, and all of that. So maybe your question was more relevant than I originally gave it credit for. Do you have any questions, Mr. Mullen, on this part of it, Mr. Lindbaum?
No, I'm sure.
Okay, do you have anything else to add, please? Mr. You content with your presentation as of the present time?
I am.
Okay, then let's see if we can move this on, because it's now 9:30. We've had one neighbor, and I think perhaps an abutter, if you want to say she's on the other side of the road, speak. Is there anybody else who has questions of the applicant as opposed to speaking in favor of or opposed to the application? Let me ask this gentleman back here, then the gentleman in the red tie will be next.
There or not?
Yes, you have to come up here, sir. Sir, if you want to sit down there, you can. You don't have to.
I've been sitting all day, that's all.
Okay, well, that's up to you. Sir, come on right over here, please.
I have to sit down or come?
Yes, sir, you have to sit in front of the microphone so we'll get a nice, pretty picture of you on
Microphones don't
TV.
work very well incidentally, but that's all right. Anyway,
Maybe we can improve that.
my name is John Shillingford,
Where do you live, Mr. Shillingford?
1386 Canton Avenue.
Good, welcome to the Board of Appeals.
Thank you very much. Which is at the end of Chestnut's Run.
At the far end or the near?
Yes,
here?
far end.
Good. We're delighted to hear from you. What do you have to say?
Now, if you enter Chestnut's Run from Canton Avenue, you will see a sign that said, "This is a private road." Now, I would venture to guess that everybody that has purchased property on Chestnut's Road, or Chestnut, whatever you want to call it,
Just let's
Right.
run, I guess. yeah.
anticipated it to be a private road for private residences, as was the use estate and all the others on there. Now, what I anticipate, what I think I see here is a semi-commercial venture being operated out of the Eustis Estate, which will, no matter what you call it, it's going to require a lot of support vehicles and quite a bit of traffic. Now, I've not heard anybody promising that all this traffic is going to be solely coming up the new road. And I would guess that a lot of it, may I finish, please?
By all means.
I would guess that a lot of it, and commercial traffic in particular, will come up Chestnut's Run, the lower part of Chestnut's Run. Now, is it possible to make any restrictions that Chestnut's Run can be reserved for the residents that live on it?
Well, I don't know that I'm particularly competent to give you a legal opinion on that issue. My layman's view of it is that if Chestnut's Run is a private road, or at least you have easement rights in that,
Yes.
And its use has been residential,
Yes?
I would tend to think that the use of that particular private way would be restricted to residential purposes for owners and invitees of those owners using Chestnut Run. I'm not sure. Mr. Mullen is an expert in transportation. Unfortunately, Mr. Daber, who sat in the last hearing, is an expert on real estate issues, and he'd know more about this than would I. But I don't think you could use Chestnut's Run for commercial purposes. As a matter of law, that having been said, the board never wants to foist on the owners or abutters of Chestnut's Run the obligation of bringing lawsuits to protect your rights, because that can be an expensive and time-consuming endeavor, because I have been in the land court perhaps too often, some would say, and it can be a very expensive and time-consuming place to be, though the judges are outstanding there. Let me do this. Mr. Sheffield, did you have any intentions, you being the applicant's lawyer, obviously, have any intentions of using Chestnut's Run for commercial purposes?
I could represent the fact that we will discourage use of Chestnut Run for any museum goer or any commercial entity or any,
Associated with the museum,
anything associated with
with the
the museum.
facility.
That's right.
Now, you seem to hedge your verbiage a little bit there. What did you say? Would you repeat that, please?
We will discourage the use.
Discourage.
Discourage. I mean, we're not going to put ropes across the road,
It is your property. I don't dispute that, right?
and we will discourage its use by any museum goer or any commercial vehicle that is providing supplies.
Right.
And my reaction is, they're not going to use it, period.
Does that include, Mr. Sheffield, some type of an appropriate signage approved by whomever the sign committee is? I think it may be the Board of Selectmen saying either not for museum use or for no
What we might
commercial
do-
vehicles or something like
What
that.
we might do is we have Chestnut Run, and we have a road off that to the right that goes to the museum. And we might say, no access to the road.
Which road? Where?
I'm saying halfway up Chestnut Run,
Well, there's quite a few residents here that live on the lower part of Chestnut's Run.
no, what I'm saying is, we could put a sign here.
Yeah, but that's halfway up.
Why wouldn't you put a sign down by the road to prohibit anybody, or at least to, as you say, to discourage? You're not going to have an armed guard out there, or...
We will do everything we can to discuss, nobody's going to use it, that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, that may be very true. I think Mr. Shillingford would feel more comfortable if you could tell us that you will attempt to put some type of a tasteful sign down there that...
Here on our property saying no access to museum.
Okay, and vendors of the museum for functions or otherwise would be informed that they have to use your regular access
They have to
and
use
not
the regular
use...
way, and as you see, there is now no, I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm sorry.
As you see, we're building this roadway so that the only access to the parking lot is really coming up through the driveway, the new driveway entrance.
you agree with me, Mr. Sheffield, as a matter of real estate law, that it would not be legal for commercial vehicles to traverse the road,
Chestnuts Road.
Chestnuts Run, for commercial purposes when it's a residential private way?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't agree with that. If
Unless
Mr.
one of the
Sherrington,
abutters, no, stay with,
Mr. Sherrington has
please,
a
please,
moving
no,
van-
please, Mr. Sheffield, you know, I know where you're going. Let me state it clearly. Obviously, the owners of people who have access to Chestnuts Run, who abut it and are lawful users, can have a plumber, a moving van, or somebody else come up there. But other than that, and that's the use of Chestnuts Run with permission by people who have rights in Chestnuts Run. But other than that, it couldn't be utilized for commercial purposes without the permission of the owners of the way.
well, remember, we're one of the owners.
Yes. So are you saying you're going to permit?
We will not allow it.
Okay, that's fine. That's why I think that's what Mr. Sheffield, Mr. Shillingford is asking you.
We will not allow it, period.
What's at stake here is the intrinsic value of the resident's property on Chestnuts Run.
Right, and it's the issue of what type of easement to traverse Chestnuts Run exists there, and whether using it commercially without the permission of the owners is overburdening the easements. That's what the issue is.
Well,
I think it is, and I think Mr. Sheffield is telling you that as an owner and a person who has rights in the run, that they will prohibit the use and will not use it commercially, and will prohibit to the extent that they can people from using it. And I tend to think that putting out a sign there that says either no entrance for museum purposes or no commercial vehicles allowed or something like that probably will be adequate.
The proof of the pudding will be in the eating.
Well, that's right, and if the eating is not good, you can certainly come back and see us and tell us what your experience really is. Okay?
Thank you.
Good, thank you for coming. The gentleman in the red tie has been waiting a long time to ask a question, so if it's a question, ask the question. If you want
I
to...
have one question and comments. I mean, it seems like it's kind of a mixture of questions and comments.
Well, it's not going to be, because we'd like to have your questions so we can have the evidence closed, and then we'll hear you on your comments on the entire presentation or
Well, I don't
whatever
want
you
you to
want.
close the evidence, because I do have a comment letter.
Okay.
So I'll hand that to you.
But why don't you tell us, first of all, do me a favor, please, get near the microphone so our TV people won't get mad at us, and tell us your name and address and whom you represent or how it goes.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Dan Hill. I'm a land use and zoning attorney out of Cambridge.
Great, this is just the person we want to hear from.
I represent several of the neighbors in the audience, Mr. Shillingsford, the Heater family, the Seidmans, Marge Jeffries, Chuck Butler, and Bill Bauer. These are all mostly abutters to this property.
They're not listed in your letter, unfortunately. It's
I can
getting
send
copies
it. I can easily send a supplemental.
Could you do that so
I'm happy to.
we'll know, because I think it's important to know whom you represent here.
Sure.
Good. Welcome to the Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
Sorry we kept you so long.
No, it's fine. It's a pleasure to be here. I guess if you want to split it up, the question I had was on the capacity issue. Where does the 99 figure come from? Is that from the fire department or something else?
It's a combination of building.
Do you want to come up, Jonathan?
My name is Jonathan Austin. I'm the architect for the project, and that limitation is the result of a combination of building and fire codes.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Mr. Hill, do you want to follow up on that, or?
Is that based upon the square footage of the indoor area? Or how is that calculated?
It's calculated by the designation of the property. It's a house museum. So there are a number of different factors. The configuration of the lower level, the area of the building, the use of the building, all of that sort of thing.
Okay.
Mr. Hill, I'm going to broaden my my earlier ruling that was a little bit restricted. I didn't realize that you were counsel for abutters, so if you want to proceed a little more broadly in your comments, or questions along these lines, go ahead.
Sure. Well, that was really my only direct question. I want to be clear up front. We're not opposed to the project, and we're not in favor of the project, so I don't really fit within one of those two boxes. But I do have some comments about the application, primarily about the event issue.
Okay, why don't we hear from you?
Great, thank you. I mean, first of all, I do want to just say, on behalf of the neighbors, that we're very pleased with the progress that's made. We are very pleased with the change of the parking lot, the no access off of Chestnuts Run. Just to address that issue, since we just talked about it 2 seconds ago, it would be very easy for this board to put a condition on the permit that you're going to be issuing anyway, that Chestnuts Run not be used for access to the museum or the grounds for any purpose except for a emergency access, of course, or maintenance vehicles just for the property itself. That would be a very simple condition to put on. It sounds like that's agreeable anyway.
And is that because the applicant owns the fee in the road, subject to easements?
Well, they own the fee. Sure, they have the right to use it just as well as we do. So
Okay.
we can't object to that anyway. But it would be within the board's authority to impose conditions. And I think you're already thinking about that. And I think the applicant is suggesting to you that they want to see fewer rather than more conditions. Naturally, if I was an applicant, I'd have the same position. This property is unique in that there are several residential abutters in close proximity. There actually is not a lot of vegetative buffer, considering the size of this property, and that's a good thing. It's a beautiful pastoral site. We don't want to see tons of vegetation installed to create a buffer. But at the same token, there needs to be some respect for the neighbors, and I think there needs to be a middle ground with respect to these events. Your, I think, questioning of the applicant about what to expect in terms